I like to say there are two things that the It Gets Better project accomplished. The most important thing is it saved lives. There have been other suicides since we launched the project in September of 2010, and those are shattering, particularly to me personally, to everyone. But Jamie Rodemeyer's suicide. Here was a kid who had made an It Gets Better video, who killed himself, and you watched it in the wake of his suicide, and it was really clear that the person that Jamie was talking to was Jamie. And it didn't work. Hope isn't always enough. Hope is enough for some, and it has saved lives. The awful position we find ourselves in, as there have been other suicides, is people don't write newspaper stories about the gay kids who haven't killed themselves. We've heard from thousands of LGBT kids all over the world now who found in the videos what they needed. The advice, the support, the adult perspective, a pen pal, because there's so many people on the videos who were talking in comments and then hooked up offline, became text buddies or email buddies or even face-to-face friends. And they found, one of the things we said we wanted to do when we created the project was bring that LGBT youth support group to that kid who lived in a part of the country that didn't have an LGBT youth support group, or who had parents who would never take their kid to an LGBT youth support group. That it was this act of cultural defiance. All this goodwill sort of accrued to the project. Seems so safe. Sports teams are doing it, corporations, the president. But what some people have lost sight of is there's really an upraised middle finger at the heart of the It Gets Better project. It is an act of aggression. What it was saying was, we are going to talk to your kids whether you want us to or not. We're not going to sit around waiting for permission anymore. We're not going to wait for you to bring your kid to the gay youth support group meeting anymore. We're not going to wait for your school to get a GSA anymore. We're just going to do it. And you can't accuse us of being pedophiles and trying to seduce your children and shut us down with that. And we've heard from so many kids. I'm in touch with kids on Twitter and email who the project saved, who tell me personally. I go to colleges and I speak. It's like 2-3 years out now. I go to college and speak, and there's some 19-year-old sophomore who was a high school junior when things started, who runs up to me or Terry, bursts into tears and hugs us because it did it. It did the trick for him or her. And that's shattering. And everyone who participated in the It Gets Better project should know that it worked, that you saved lives. Even if it saved one life, and that was all it accomplished, it would have been a success. And it saved many lives and changed many lives. I always think of this one girl in particular who wrote in because her parents freaked out when she came out to them as a lesbian. And she wrote to say, her parents were doing everything wrong, forced her into reparative therapy, threatened to throw her out of the house, threatened to cut her off from contact with her siblings, not pay for her education. And she wrote to say that she was watching It Gets Better videos on her phone in her parents' bedroom, or in her bedroom, under the covers in the middle of the night in her parents' house. And that's what the It Gets Better project had the power to do. We kicked down the front door of those people's house, those parents. We kicked down their front door, marched up to their daughter's room and climbed into bed with her. And she was seeing in these videos a future for herself. And that's hugely important for a lot of LGBT kids. And that's not just me pulling it out of my ass. The research backs that up, that LGBT kids often have a hard time imagining a future life for themselves because they're so deprived from role models. And we were able to give that to her. And what she said, which was really heartbreaking, and I remember it by heart, was that every day I go downstairs and I look at my mother and father and I love them for who they're going to be in 10 years. And she's seen that. She has that image in her head now because of the It Gets Better project, because she's seen so many videos that were created by adult men and women whose parents had the same reaction that hers are having when they came out, whose parents rejected them, bullied them, doubled their already quadrupled risk of suicide by rejecting them, and whose parents now love and accept their adult lesbian, gay, bi, and trans kids. She is able to love her parents right now at a time in her life when her parents are incapable of loving her, because she is invested in this future that she's seen at the It Gets Better project. She's seen videos where people are sitting on sofas with the parents who had rejected them when they came out as teenagers and been brutal in their rejection, who now love their LGBT kids, but are also sitting on couches next to their kids in their videos apologizing to their kids for the way that they behaved, for how they rejected them. That's the ultimate accomplishment of the It Gets Better project. The penultimate accomplishment was, there's this great quote from Sexual Ecology by Gabriel Rotella that a lot of gay men and lesbians don't feel a particular responsibility for gay youth, in part because we don't raise the next generation of gay men and lesbians, but also in part because we've been accused of recruiting for so long that we shy away from the whole painful subject. And what you saw in the first 2 weeks after we launched the It Gets Better project was adult lesbian and gay and bi and trans people all over the world suddenly disinhibiting, that the old order collapsing. Because the order had been, sorry, I'm going on really long with this one, but this is particularly meaningful for me. The old deal the culture made with gay adults for 40 years, really since Stonewall, was this. You are ours to torture until you're 18. Once you're 18, once you're an adult, you can come out, you can move away, and if we haven't fucked you up too badly, maybe you can build a life for yourself. There's one thing you can't do once you're a gay adult, though. You can't talk to the kids, the queer kids we are still torturing, in the same schools, homes, churches, suburbs, malls. And if you try to talk to those kids, often in the same families, if you try to talk to those kids once you're a gay adult, if you reach out to them because you ache for them, because you empathize, we will accuse you of being pedophiles. We will accuse you of recruiting. And that was a really deadly, politically deadly accusation. And so we, as Ritello wrote in Sexual Ecology, shied away from the whole painful subject. And what you saw in the first 2 weeks of the It Gets Better project, you saw all these adult LGBT people opening up and speaking and reaching out and talking to these kids. And no longer, the old deal collapsed. The compact, the culture made us just fell apart in 2 weeks. That we weren't going to let that accusation of recruiting or pedophilia stop us from reaching out to these kids and talking to them and sharing our stories with them and trying to help them, lest we be accused of recruiting. And it was just like, okay, fuck you, game over. We're done with that bullshit. That no longer has the ability to stay us or stop us anymore. We're going to use this new tool, this technology, YouTube, and we're going to talk to your kid. We're going to talk to your kid whether you like it or not. We're going to talk to your kid whether you realize right now that you want us to. When you come around, when you finally one day love and accept your gay child, if indeed you are rejecting your gay child, and you find out that they were watching these videos and getting what they needed to get through what you were doing to your gay child, you will thank us for talking to your child at that time when you were failing your kid so spectacularly. So for me, those are the things that the project did. It saved lives, we know it did, and it destroyed that inhibition in so many LGBT adults, that inability, that fear that if we talk to LGBT kids that we will be accused of pedophilia and recruiting. Done. We're done with that.